I could feel the weight of the city pressing down on me as I stood outside the glass doors of Montclair Enterprises. Rain-slicked streets reflected the neon lights, and my heart thudded against my ribs like it was trying to escape. This was it, the job that could finally give me independence, a place where my work would speak louder than the whispered judgments of my family. I had rehearsed every answer in front of the mirror that morning, pacing in my tiny apartment while my cat watched, judgment in her green eyes. "You've got this," I whispered to my reflection, trying to convince myself more than anyone else. The truth was, I was terrified, not of failing, but of walking in there and seeing her. Her name was Vanessa, my sister, my older sister, the one whose smile could disarm anyone, whose sarcasm cut deeper than a knife, the one who had spent my entire life making me feel invisible. She had always thrived on attention, the perfect daughter in my parents' eyes, the golden girl who never failed to remind me of my shortcomings. And now, by some cruel twist of fate, or perhaps cosmic humor, she was going to be conducting my interview. I took a deep breath, pushed the door open, and stepped inside. The lobby smelled faintly of coffee and expensive furniture polish. A receptionist smiled at me, her warmth doing nothing to ease the knot tightening in my stomach. I sat down, smoothing the creases in my blazer, trying to project confidence I didn't entirely feel. Then I saw her, Vanessa, sitting behind a sleek mahogany desk, her sharp eyes scanning a folder. For a moment, she didn't look up, and I almost felt relief. Maybe she wouldn't recognize me, or maybe she wouldn't care. "Alaina." Her voice cut through the quiet lobby like ice. My stomach dropped. She looked up, her lips curling into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "It's nice to see you." The emphasis on "see" was deliberate. I knew that tone. It was the one she used when she wanted to remind me that she had power, that she could make me feel small. I forced a smile. "Vanessa, good to see you too." She gestured for me to sit. As I crossed the room, I felt every insecure memory of our childhood flash before me. The time she told Mom I'd ruined the school recital, the way she'd bribe our friends to exclude me from parties, the nights I cried myself to sleep because her shadow loomed larger than mine. And now she had me sitting across from her, in the role of applicant and prey. The first few questions were standard: experience, strengths, weaknesses, but I noticed her questions carried a sharper edge, designed to unsettle me. "I see you stayed at your previous job for only 6 months, she said, raising an eyebrow. "Can you explain why someone would leave so quickly?" I felt a flash of anger, but tamped it down. "I needed this job. It was a learning experience," I said evenly. I realized that the environment wasn't aligned with my career goals. I left to find a role where I could make a meaningful impact. She leaned back, tapping her pen against her folder. Meaningful impact. Interesting choice of words for someone who's had so many missteps. Her eyes flicked to mine with a knowing smirk, like she was daring me to respond. I took a steadying breath. I believe that every experience, even the challenging ones, teaches us something valuable. I'm ready to bring that perspective to Montclair. She hummed, not giving away much. "Impressive. You've clearly prepared your answers. But let's see how you handle a real scenario." For the next 10 minutes, she grilled me, setting up a scenario that tested my problem-solving under pressure. I answered carefully, deliberately, refusing to let my nerves show. But she interrupted me constantly, pointing out minor mistakes, each jab deliberate. By the end, I was exhausted, mentally drained, and yet, I had survived. Then came the last part of the interview, the part that made my blood run cold. Vanessa smiled, her voice sweet but dangerous. "Well, Alaina, I have to admit, it's surprising to see you here. I almost thought you'd never manage to step out of the shadows." The words hit like a punch to the chest. I could feel my cheeks burning, my throat tightening. But I didn't crumble. I held her gaze. "Maybe it's time I stop hiding in them," I said softly. She laughed, the sound sharp and brittle. "Ambitious. Brave even. But let's be honest, brave isn't always enough, is it?" I opened my mouth to respond, but the moment was shattered by a knock on the glass door behind us. A man stepped into the lobby, tall, confident, with an air of authority that made heads turn. My heart skipped a beat before recognition hit like a lightning bolt. It was Daniel, my fiancé. The man I had been building a life with for the past 3 years, the one who had supported me through heartbreaks and job rejections, the one who had promised to never let anyone treat me as less than I am. And he was Montclair Enterprises CEO. Vanessa's eyes widened just slightly, though she quickly masked it with composure. "Daniel," she said, her tone carefully neutral. "Vanessa," he replied, his gaze sharp, assessing. Then his eyes landed on me. And something shifted. The tension in the room snapped, like a wire under too much pressure. I felt a surge of vindication, mixed with apprehension. Vanessa, who had spent years attempting to humiliate me, who had thrived on my insecurities, was now face to face with the man who held all the power here, and who happened to be mine. For a moment, the world seemed to hold its breath. Vanessa's carefully crafted smirk faltered. Her poised posture betrayed the tiniest crack. And I realized, with a thrill that warmed my chest, that the game was about to change. "Alaina," Daniel said, his voice calm but commanding, "I believe this is the first time we've officially met in a professional context. I'll be overseeing your interview process today." Vanessa's eyes flicked between us, a storm of emotions passing through her, surprise, recognition, and maybe the first hint of fear. The control she had wielded so effortlessly over me seemed fragile. I swallowed hard, the adrenaline pumping through me. This was no longer just an interview. It was a reckoning. And I had just realized that the person who had underestimated me, the person who had spent years trying to diminish me, had no idea who she was truly facing. As Daniel stepped closer, I felt a quiet power settle in my chest. This was my moment, not just to survive, but to rise. And Vanessa, well, she was about to find out that the rules of this game had changed. Vanessa cleared her throat, attempting to mask the tremor in her voice, but it was too late. The carefully constructed veneer of superiority she had carried into that room all these years was cracking. I could see it in the subtle twitch of her jaw, the way her perfectly manicured hands gripped the edge of the desk. She was used to being untouchable. She was not used to being outmaneuvered. "Daniel," she began, a forced smile flickering across her lips. I was just about to finalize the interview. Daniel's eyes, sharp as a hawk, met hers. "I think we need to continue in a slightly different format," he said, his voice calm but authoritative. "Alaina, why don't you walk me through your approach to team management in high-pressure scenarios?" Vanessa's eyes narrowed, and I could practically hear her internal gears grinding. This was her arena, and suddenly, she wasn't calling the shots. I took a deep breath, feeling the adrenaline surge through me like electricity, and spoke confidently, detailing my experience, my strategies, and my vision. I saw Daniel nod occasionally, but what struck me most was Vanessa's reaction. Her lips pressed into a thin line. Each word I spoke was a blow to the illusion she had carefully crafted, the one where I was the timid, unsure sister, the one who never dared step into the spotlight. And with each passing minute, she realized something terrifying. This Alaina, the one she had underestimated her entire life, was not only competent but radiant with quiet authority. Vanessa tried to interject, to assert her usual dominance. "I'm not sure that approach," she started, only for Daniel to hold up a hand. "Vanessa, please let her finish," he said, his gaze steady, unwavering. "I want to hear her perspective without interruption." For the first time in years, I felt vindication ripple through me, not petty revenge, but the powerful satisfaction of being truly seen. Vanessa's jaw tightened, her nostrils flaring ever so slightly, and I knew she was panicking inside. She had underestimated me for so long, thinking that her charm, her connections, and her history of perfect choices would always outweigh my efforts. But the universe had other plans today. After I finished, Daniel leaned back, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "Impressive, Alaina. Your approach is thoughtful, strategic, and well-articulated. Exactly the kind of leadership we need here." Vanessa's eyes darted to me, disbelief and fury warring for dominance. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. And in that moment, I realized something. She had spent years trying to humiliate me, and now, the tables had turned entirely. I felt a surge of empowerment that I hadn't known I could feel. Every humiliation she had ever inflicted, the whispered comparisons, the subtle sabotages, the endless reminders that I could never measure up, all of it melted away in that instant. Here I was, standing strong, my fiancé's approval silently backing me, my competence undeniable, and she powerless. Vanessa's next attempt at control came out as thinly veiled sarcasm. "Well, Daniel, it's clear she's enthusiastic." Daniel raised an eyebrow, his tone carefully measured. "I'd call it confident. And in this position, confidence paired with skill is invaluable. Don't you agree, Vanessa?" Her face flushed slightly, a shade I hadn't seen on her since childhood. "Yes, of course," she said, her voice tight. I suppressed a smile, but inside, I was basking in the irony. The sister who had orchestrated so many moments of embarrassment for me now had to swallow her pride and sit silently as I demonstrated not only my competence, but my resilience. As the interview drew to a close, Daniel asked me to summarize why I believed I was the right fit for the role. I spoke with clarity and conviction, highlighting my skills, my dedication, and my ability to thrive under pressure. I could feel Vanessa's eyes boring into my back, sharp and resentful, but I refused to let it break me. When I finished, Daniel nodded, his expression thoughtful. "Alaina, thank you for your candidacy today. I'm confident you will bring exceptional value to Montclair." The words hung in the air, electric, and I felt a mix of relief and triumph. Vanessa's smile was tight, almost brittle now, as she processed the reality that the person she had tried to humiliate, her own sister, was walking out of her office not just intact but victorious. As we left the room, Vanessa's composure returned, though it was a fragile mask. I could sense the wheels turning in her head, the scheming that had always defined her. But for the first time, I wasn't afraid of her scheming. I had learned something invaluable that day. I was stronger than her judgments, more capable than her interference, and untouchable in ways she couldn't predict. That evening, Daniel and I walked through the streets, rain still glistening on the pavement, the city lights casting a golden haze around us. I felt lighter than I had in years, liberated from the shadow of my sister's long-standing attempts to diminish me. "Alaina," Daniel said, his voice gentle but serious, "you handled today with grace and strength. I'm proud of you." I smiled, feeling warmth flood through me. "I've never felt more free," I admitted. "And I've never realized how much power I've been denying myself by letting fear and past humiliations control me." He squeezed my hand. "This is just the beginning. You're going to shine here, and not even Vanessa can stop that." But just as the relief settled in, a message pinged on my phone. I glanced down and my stomach sank. It was from Vanessa. One line. Cold. Calculated. "Enjoy your victory today. But don't think it's over. You'll see soon enough." My hands tightened around the phone, a shiver running down my spine. Despite everything, part of me felt a familiar tension because Vanessa never gave up. Never. And I knew, deep down, that this confrontation was far from over. I realized that the battle wasn't just about a single interview. It was about years of undermining, betrayal, and silent torment. And now, with Daniel unknowingly in the mix, the stakes were higher than ever. As I looked up at the rain-slicked streets, my reflection in the windows shimmered back at me, stronger, wiser, unafraid. But I couldn't shake the feeling that Vanessa's next move would test me in ways I wasn't ready for. And that realization made my pulse quicken, not with fear, but with anticipation. I had survived her attempt to humiliate me today, but tomorrow, the real challenge would begin. The next morning, I walked into Montclair Enterprises with a calm I hadn't felt in years. Rain had stopped, leaving the streets glistening and clean, a reflection of the clarity I had found within myself. I knew Vanessa's message from last night wasn't idle threats. She had a history of obsession, of manipulation, and I was fully aware she could attempt something that would shake my new life to its core. Daniel had insisted he wouldn't involve himself unnecessarily, letting me face this challenge on my own. And though his faith in me bolstered my courage, I realized that the true battle would be waged not with fists or confrontation, but with patience, strategy, and emotional intelligence, the very things Vanessa had underestimated all these years. I entered the office, the polished floors echoing beneath my heels, and spotted her immediately. Vanessa was seated at her usual spot, her expression carefully neutral, though her eyes betrayed tension. She glanced at me, her lips pressing into a thin, tight line. I met her gaze steadily, refusing to give her the satisfaction of seeing fear or uncertainty. "Alaina," she said, her tone overly sweet, almost theatrical. "So, you survived yesterday." I smiled faintly. "And I thrived. You should try it sometime." Her jaw tightened. "We'll see how long that lasts." Daniel appeared behind me, clipboard in hand, observing quietly. I sensed Vanessa's discomfort. She hadn't anticipated his presence being such a silent, yet potent force in the room. He didn't speak, didn't intervene. He simply stood, allowing the tension between the sisters to speak volumes. Over the next week, Vanessa attempted subtle maneuvers, undermining my assignments, spreading doubts among colleagues, and whispering insinuations designed to make me appear unfit for my role. Every time, I countered with professionalism, grace, and quiet confidence. The irony was intoxicating. Vanessa's efforts only highlighted my strengths, my resilience, and my ability to navigate challenges without stooping to pettiness. Then came the pivotal moment. A high-stakes project had been assigned, one that would determine the future of a critical partnership for Montclair. Vanessa attempted to claim the lead under the pretense of experience, but Daniel, observing her maneuver, turned to me. "Alaina," he said, "I want you to take this. Show us exactly what you're capable of." I felt the weight of opportunity settle on my shoulders. This wasn't just about proving my competence, it was about reclaiming the narrative of my life, stepping out of the shadows my sister had cast for decades. The project was grueling. Long hours, difficult negotiations, and the constant shadow of Vanessa's disapproval threatened to wear me down. Yet, every challenge reminded me of what I had endured to get here. The years of doubt, the moments of humiliation, the nights of silent tears. And with each step, I discovered a strength that had always been there, waiting for me to claim it. Vanessa tried to sabotage me subtly, misleading emails, withheld information, but Daniel had made it clear, my leadership and judgment were trusted. I responded with poise, clarifying misinformation, rallying the team, and turning potential setbacks into opportunities. The final presentation to the board was a test not only of strategy, but of nerve. I stood at the podium, heart racing, hands steady, and began outlining the project with a clarity and conviction that left no room for doubt. Board members nodded, engaged, and asked pointed questions I answered with calm precision. By the time I finished, applause echoed through the room, and I saw Vanessa's face pale, not with shame, exactly, but with the realization that her control was gone. Afterward, in the quiet of Daniel's office, he placed a hand on my shoulder. "Alaina, you didn't just succeed, you conquered." I smiled, feeling a rush of triumph, but also a sense of liberation. This wasn't revenge in the petty sense. This was reclaiming my power, standing unapologetically in my worth, and no longer allowing anyone, even Vanessa, to define me. And then came the confrontation I had both dreaded and anticipated. Vanessa cornered me outside the office, her voice low, sharp with frustration. "You think all of this proves you're better than me?" she demanded. "You're just lucky Daniel isn't involved." I looked at her steadily. "No, Vanessa. This isn't luck. This is skill, perseverance, and refusing to let your cruelty define me. You spent years trying to humiliate me, and now you see that I'm unstoppable." Her face twisted with fury, then shame, then something like fear. For the first time, I saw the person behind the polished exterior, the insecurities, the need for validation, the fear of being irrelevant. I realized that while I had grown into strength, she was trapped in a cycle of envy and bitterness. Maybe you're right, she whispered, her voice breaking. I I didn't think you'd. I didn't finish her sentence. I didn't need to. My silence said it all. I had surpassed her expectations, shattered her assumptions, and yet I offered no cruelty in return. I walked away, leaving her standing in the corridor, a silent witness to her own unraveling. Weeks later, Montclair celebrated the successful project launch. Daniel pulled me aside in the quiet of the after-party, his eyes shining with pride. "You've done more than prove yourself here," he said. "You've shown what true resilience looks like. And no one, not even Vanessa, can ever take that from you." I nodded, feeling a profound sense of closure. The job, the recognition, the success, it was all meaningful, but the true victory was internal. I had finally stepped out of the shadow of my sister's toxicity, embraced my worth, and realized the power of resilience, intelligence, and self-belief. As for Vanessa, I never sought revenge in the way she might have expected. I let her actions, her inability to adapt, and her obsession with control do that for me. I had finally learned the most important lesson of all. True empowerment isn't about humiliating others. It's about standing firm, unshaken, and thriving despite their attempts to hold you down. That night, as I sat across from Daniel, hands entwined, I felt a calm I had never known. The storm had passed. The shadows were behind me, and I was free, stronger, wiser, and ready to embrace the life I had fought so hard to claim. For the first time, I could see the truth clearly. My worth had never depended on her validation. It had always been mine, waiting for me to claim. And now, finally, I had.